The first time I saw Nathan Cole, he was standing barefoot in the hallway, holding a potted plant like it was a newborn child. He looked up at me, smiled, and somehow, in that instant, I knew something in my life had just shifted. It wasn't the kind of smile that fades once you look away. It lingered, like sunlight trapped behind your eyelids. I was 23, broke, and working 2 part-time jobs just to stay in my cramped apartment. He'd just moved into 4B, right across from mine. And from that first encounter, something about him refused to stay ordinary. Nathan was the kind of person who hummed when he cooked, whistled when it rained, and wore mismatched socks on purpose. The world seemed lighter around him. I, on the other hand, had long forgotten what light felt like. I'd been surviving, not living. A week after he moved in, I heard a soft knock on my door. "Hey," he said, smiling like he always did. "Could you help me fix a shelf? It's kind of falling apart." A simple favor. That's how it began. When I stepped into his apartment, I was hit by a mix of sandalwood and paint. Warm, alive, human. His living room was a mess of books, half-finished canvases, and an old record player softly spinning Fleetwood Mac. I found myself smiling without meaning to. "You paint?" I asked, nodding toward the canvas propped near the window. "Try to," he said, handing me a screwdriver. "Mostly when I can't sleep, which is always." We worked side by side, close enough that I could feel his shoulder brush against mine now and then. It was nothing. It should have been nothing. But the air between us was charged, heavy with something I couldn't name. When the shelf finally stood straight, he turned to me, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Thanks, man. Seriously, I owe you." I shrugged. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his laugh, the way his hair fell across his forehead, how his voice softened when he said thanks. Days turned into weeks. The simple favors piled up, fixing his lamp, picking up his mail, helping him move a couch. But somewhere between the shared dinners, the long talks at midnight, and the laughter echoing down our hallway, I realized something terrifying. I was falling for him. And I had no idea if he felt the same. One evening, Nathan knocked again, not with his usual brightness, but hesitantly. "Leo," he said quietly, "can I ask you something kind of weird?" His eyes searched mine. Vulnerable. Honest. "Yeah, of course." He hesitated. "Would you pretend to be my boyfriend? Just for one night?" I laughed before I could stop myself. "You're serious?" He nodded. "My parents are visiting from Oregon. They still think I'm with, well, someone. I kind of lied to make things easier. I just don't want to deal with their questions." My chest tightened. 100 responses flickered in my head, but the only word that came out was, "Okay." He looked relieved, and for a moment, I almost regretted saying yes. Because I knew this was dangerous. Pretending meant touching, looking, smiling. All the things I'd been secretly craving but couldn't have. The night came faster than I expected. Nathan opened his door wearing a white button-up and a nervous grin. "You look great," he said, his eyes scanning me a little longer than necessary. "So do you," I said, too quickly, too sincerely. His parents were warm, talkative, and oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. They asked about how we met, and Nathan didn't miss a beat. "He spilled coffee on me in the lobby," he said. "Best accident ever." They laughed. I smiled. But when his hand slipped into mine under the table, the laughter blurred into white noise. My pulse raced. Every word he said after that was background, because all I could feel was his hand, warm, steady, and trembling ever so slightly. When his parents finally left, we stood by the door, silent. The act was over. "You were amazing," he said softly. "Thank you." And before I could reply, he stepped closer. Too close. "Leo," his voice cracked just a little. For a second there, it didn't feel like pretending. Neither of us spoke after that. The air was thick, suffocating. He looked at me, really looked, and in that moment, I saw everything. Fear, longing, hope. Then he kissed me. It wasn't cinematic or graceful. It was messy, desperate, like we'd both been holding our breath for too long. My hands found his shirt, his fingers tangled in my hair. For a moment, the world stopped spinning. When we finally pulled away, he whispered, "I'm sorry." But I wasn't. The next morning, he didn't knock. He didn't text. Days went by, and the space between our doors felt like miles. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe he regretted it, maybe he needed time. But deep down, I knew what was really happening: fear. It wasn't the kiss that scared him, it was what it meant. A week later, I came home from a late shift to find him sitting outside my door, a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him. "I messed up," he said as soon as I stepped closer. His voice was raw, broken. I told myself it didn't mean anything, but I can't stop thinking about you. I froze. "Nathan, I don't care if it's complicated," he interrupted. I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." The hallway was quiet except for our breathing. I didn't know what to say. Every rational part of me screamed to step back, to protect myself. But I couldn't. I crouched down beside him. "You don't have to apologize for feeling something real." He looked up, tears glinting in his eyes. "I'm scared, Leo. I've never." "I know." I reached out, brushing my thumb across his cheek. "Me too." That night, we didn't talk much. He fell asleep on my couch, his head resting against my shoulder. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Fragile, terrifying, beautiful peace. But peace never lasts long, does it? The next morning, there was a note on my door. It was from our landlord. "Renovations on your floor. Please prepare to relocate temporarily." Temporary. Just 2 months. But that's all it took for everything to unravel. Nathan's job took him out of town during that same period. We promised to keep in touch. Daily calls, late-night texts, little check-ins. But promises have a way of fading when life interferes. The calls became shorter, the texts fewer, until one day, silence. 2 months turned into 3. My messages went unanswered. His apartment stayed dark. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was over, that maybe he'd met someone else, or maybe he'd realized what we had was just temporary. Like my lease, like everything else in my life. But part of me refused to believe it. Because love like that doesn't just disappear. Then, one rainy evening, I came home to find a letter slipped under my door. No return address, just my name written in his handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Leo, I've been trying to find the courage to say this, but words always fail me when it comes to you. That night, every second of it, was real. You made me see myself in ways I didn't think were possible. I left because I thought you deserved someone who wasn't still figuring himself out. But the truth is, I've been lost without you. If you still feel the same, meet me where it all started, at the hallway, by the plan I was holding the day we met." 9 p.m. Tonight. The clock read 8:46. My heart slammed against my ribs as I bolted for the door. I don't remember locking the door behind me. I don't remember the elevator ride down, or the way my heartbeat seemed to echo in the empty hallways. All I remember is the sound of the rain, relentless, steady, like the world was holding its breath along with me. By the time I reached the 4th floor, I was drenched. My shoes squeaked against the linoleum. The air smelled faintly of wet concrete and jasmine from the potted plants near the window. And there he was. Nathan stood exactly where he said he'd be, by the hallway, holding that same little plant. It had grown taller, wilder, like time itself had touched it. He looked up when he heard me. His hair was soaked, his white shirt clinging to his frame, his expression somewhere between fear and relief. "You came," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "You didn't think I would?" He gave a half-smile. I wasn't sure I deserved it. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with months of unspoken words. Rain tapped gently on the windows. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaked open and shut again, like the universe giving us privacy. I took a step closer, then another, until I could see the raindrops caught on his eyelashes, trembling like tiny glass beads. "I waited," I said. "Every day. I didn't know if you were ever coming back." "I wanted to," he said softly. "I just didn't know how. I thought I needed to figure out who I was first. But the truth is, Leo, the first only ever felt like myself when I was with you." Something inside me cracked open. I wanted to be angry, to ask why he disappeared without a word, to tell him how many nights I'd stared at his empty door, hoping to hear his laugh through the walls again. But looking at him now, I couldn't. Because love, the real kind, doesn't keep score. It just waits. I stepped closer until our foreheads touched. "I'm not mad," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm just glad you came back." Nathan closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. I missed you so much. And before I could reply, his arms wrapped around me, tight, desperate, real. The world blurred. The rain, the hallway, the time we'd lost, it all melted away until there was only this, his heartbeat against mine. When he finally pulled back, he looked at me with that same look from months ago, the one that had changed everything. Come inside, he said. His apartment hadn't changed much. The same stack of books by the window, the same half-finished paintings. But the air felt different, softer, like it was finally allowed to breathe. He handed me a towel and sat down on the couch. I followed, my fingers brushing his. I never stopped thinking about that night, he said quietly. I kept replaying it, wondering if it was real, or if I'd imagined how you looked at me. It was real, I said. Every second of it. He smiled faintly, running a hand through his wet hair. You know, my mom keeps asking if I'm seeing anyone. I told her I'm working on it. I laughed. That's one way to put it. He looked up at me again, eyes steady. What if we stop pretending, Leo? What if this time we don't run? The words hung in the air like a promise. And for once, I didn't feel the need to question them. I reached out and took his hand. Then let's stop running. The days that followed felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. We started small, coffee runs, movie nights, the occasional grocery store trip where our hands brushed in the cereal aisle. It was simple, ordinary, and yet every moment carried weight. Nathan painted more. He said I made him want to create again. And I started writing, little notes, fragments of feelings I didn't know how to say aloud. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me with that quiet awe, like he couldn't believe I was still there. And truthfully, I felt the same. It wasn't all perfect. There were moments of doubt, whispers of fear about what people might say, about what our families would think. One night, after dinner, he confessed, I haven't told my parents yet. Not really. I told them I'm seeing someone, but I didn't say it was you. I nodded slowly. You'll tell them when you're ready. He sighed. I want to. I've never done this before. I don't want to lose them. I reached for his hand. Then let's not rush it. We'll take it one step at a time. He smiled, small, grateful. You're too patient with me. I'm not patient, I said softly. I'm just sure. Weeks passed. Spring bled into summer. The city grew louder, brighter, alive. We fell into a rhythm that felt almost sacred. Morning coffee together before work. Late-night walks when the city lights blurred like constellations on wet pavement. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. We just existed, side by side, and that was enough. But deep down, I knew something was coming. Love, I'd learned, doesn't stay still. It demands to be seen, to be lived out loud. It happened one evening in July. We were at a small restaurant downtown, tucked in a corner booth, laughing about something stupid I'd said. Nathan reached across the table and brushed his thumb over my wrist, absent-minded, natural. But the gesture didn't go unnoticed. His coworker, sitting 2 tables away, froze. Recognition flickered in her eyes. Nathan didn't notice at first, but when she walked over to say hello, her tone was different, cautious, curious. After she left, I saw the shift in his expression, the nervous tapping of his fingers, the way his eyes darted toward the door. Hey, I said gently. It's okay. He shook his head. It's not. She's going to tell everyone at work. So what if she does? He looked up, frustration and fear warring in his eyes. You don't get it, Leo. My job. I do get it, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But you can't keep hiding forever. His jaw tightened. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, I said. It's brave. The silence between us stretched. Then he whispered, I'm not as brave as you think. That night, he didn't come home with me. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd pushed too hard. If maybe the walls he'd built around himself were taller than I could climb. The next day, he didn't text. Neither did I. Days passed, slow and heavy. The quiet hurt more than any argument could. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. Nathan, meet me at the studio. 7 p.m. My stomach nodded. When I arrived, the place was dimly lit, the smell of turpentine thick in the air. Canvases leaned against every wall, some half-finished, some splattered with color. Nathan stood in front of one, a brush in hand. Without turning, he said, I told them. I froze. What? He turned then, eyes glassy but determined. My parents. My coworkers. Everyone. I told them about us. My heart pounded. How did they? They didn't take it well, he said simply. My mom cried. My dad didn't say much. My boss told me to keep things professional. But I don't care. Not anymore. He set the brush down and gestured to the painting behind him. I painted this instead. I stepped closer, and my breath caught. It was us. Two figures standing in a hallway, drenched in rain. One holding a small plant, the other reaching out, eyes full of something between love and fear. The colors bled together, blue, gold, silver, like emotions too strong to contain. It's beautiful, I whispered. He smiled faintly. It's the truth. And for the first time since I'd met him, Nathan looked free. I reached out and took his hand. You did it. He shook his head. We did it. We stood there for a long time, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city below. He leaned his forehead against mine, whispering, You were right. Love isn't supposed to be easy, but it's worth it. I smiled. It always is. We kissed, slow, certain, unafraid. The kind of kiss that doesn't hide, that doesn't apologize. And for the first time, I realized something simple yet profound. The favor he asked me months ago hadn't just changed my life. It had rewritten it. Because love, in all its messy, terrifying, beautiful forms, had found us both, not in perfection, but in truth. Months later, on a bright October morning, we moved in together. The same hallway that once separated us now led to one door, one life. The plant, the one from that first day, sat by the window in our new place, leaves stretching toward the light. Sometimes, when I catch Nathan humming to himself while he paints, or when he wraps his arms around me from behind as I make coffee, I think back to that night he asked me for a simple favor. And I realize it was never simple. It was everything. The first few weeks living together felt like a quiet miracle. There was no grand announcement, no sudden transformation, just the slow, steady rhythm of two people learning how to exist in the same space without fear. Nathan liked mornings. I didn't. He'd wake before sunrise, barefoot and sleepy-eyed, padding to the kitchen to make coffee while I buried my face in the pillow. The smell of freshly brewed beans always pulled me out of bed eventually, no matter how much I complained. He'd grin as I stumbled out. Hair a mess. You're cute when you're grumpy. Shut up, I'd mutter, reaching for my mug. But the corner of my mouth always betrayed me with a smile. It was domestic, ordinary, the kind of simplicity I never thought I'd want. But there was something sacred about it, something grounding. After years of chaos, of half-lived days, and almost relationships, I finally felt home. Still, love, real love, has a way of testing its own strength. One evening, Nathan came home late, shoulders slumped. I could tell something was wrong before he even spoke. My dad called, he said quietly, dropping his bag by the door. I looked up from the couch. What happened? He hesitated. He wants to visit. My heart skipped. That's good, right? He shook his head. He wants to come alone. Said Mom isn't ready yet. I nodded slowly. Are you? He didn't answer right away. I don't know. I'm scared he'll look at me differently. That I'll look at myself differently after. I walked over, placing a hand on his chest. Then let him see you. The real you. That's all you've ever needed to be. He looked at me like he was trying to memorize my face. How do you always know what to say? I don't, I said softly. I just know you. His father came that weekend. A tall man with kind eyes and the sort of quiet that filled a room without trying. The first few minutes were painfully formal. We sat at the kitchen table, pretending to care about the weather, about traffic, about anything but the reason he was really here. His father looked at me, really looked. Then he nodded. I've heard a lot about you. It wasn't a smile, but it wasn't rejection either. He stayed for dinner. The conversation was awkward but civil, cautious but hopeful. When he finally left, he paused at the door and said, Take care of each other. Nathan stood there long after the door closed, his eyes glassy. He didn't say he disapproved, I said quietly. He didn't have to, Nathan murmured. But he didn't walk away either. That's something. He turned to me, a small, shaky smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, it is. That night, as we lay in bed, he whispered into the dark, Do you think it ever gets easier? I thought for a long time before answering. I think love doesn't get easier. We just get stronger. He reached for my hand. Then I want to keep getting stronger with you. And just like that, the silence felt like a promise again. The months passed quietly after that. Our lives settled into patterns that felt permanent. Work, laughter, late-night talks, the occasional fight about who forgot to buy milk. But one evening, as I came home from work, I found Nathan sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes. "What's going on?" I asked. He looked up, smiling nervously. "I got accepted into the art residency program in Seattle." My stomach tightened. "That's amazing." "It's 6 months," he said softly. "Maybe longer." I forced a smile. "You have to go." He frowned. "You're not upset?" "Of course I am," I admitted. "But I'm not going to be the reason you say no to something you've dreamed of." He leaned forward, cupping my face. "You've always been the reason I say yes to everything that scares me." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a choked whisper. "Then promise me one thing, that you'll come back." His eyes met mine, steady and sure. "Always." The night before his flight, the city felt different, quieter, slower, like it knew we were about to pause our story. We walked along the river, hand in hand, saying everything and nothing all at once. The water shimmered under the bridge lights, and Nathan stopped, turning to face me. "Do you remember the first night we met?" he asked. "How could I forget? You were holding that stupid plant." He laughed softly. "You looked at me like I was the most confusing thing you'd ever seen." I said, smiling. "Still am." He kissed me then, slow and deep, as if trying to seal time itself. When we pulled apart, he whispered, "You changed my life, Leo." I rested my forehead against his. "You gave mine meaning." The next morning, I drove him to the airport. Neither of us said much on the way. Words felt too small. At the gate, he squeezed my hand once, hard. 6 months, he said. "That's nothing." I nodded, though my throat burned. "Yeah, nothing." He smiled, that same smile from the hallway months ago, then disappeared into the crowd. I stood there long after he was gone, the echo of his footsteps fading into the hum of the airport. The first few weeks without him were the hardest. His toothbrush still sat by the sink. His mug, the one with the chipped rim, waited beside the coffee maker every morning. I left it there, unable to move it. We talked every night, at first, then every few days. The time difference made it harder, but hearing his voice, even through static, was enough to keep me breathing. He'd tell me about the art studios, the people he met, the long walks by the Seattle waterfront. I'd tell him about the new neighbor upstairs who played guitar too loud, or how the plant by our window refused to stop growing. "You're taking care of it, right?" he'd tease. "Better than I take care of myself," I'd say. "Good," he'd laugh. "That's my boy." Those calls became the thread holding me together. Then one night, about 3 months in, he called with a different tone in his voice. "Leo," he said quietly, "they offered me an extension." My chest tightened. "For how long?" "A year." I didn't speak. "I haven't decided yet," he said quickly. "I wanted to talk to you first." I forced my voice steady. "You should take it." He frowned through the phone. "But that means—" "It means you'll be doing what you love," I said. "And that's all I've ever wanted for you." There was a long silence. Then he whispered, "I love you."